Okay, the actual 5 were, let me pull this up. We were going to do a group assignment to get it, but we didn't have it. You were exactly right. Phonemic awareness was one. Phonics is another one. Then we also have reading fluency, comprehension, very good. And I want to give you a link, let me pull that link up, to this excellent book, or should I say booklet, that talks all about the 5 main parts of reading instruction. So if you see that link in the chat, go ahead and click on that real quick. And this is just a simple booklet, a closer look at the 5 essential components of effective reading instruction. And then you'll see right there, phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. And this is all by the National Reading Panel. So this is all research-based and exactly what we should be doing every day in the classroom. So take, some time to read through this if you haven't already. If you've had the reading instruction courses, you've probably already seen this, but it is a great resource to have. So let's go ahead and move forward. Now, the first thing we were going to talk about was phonemic awareness. So the first thing we're going to think about is sounds. This slide says that although English has only 26 letters, it has 18 vowel phonemes, 25 consonant phonemes, and 43 distinct sounds. So, of course, every letter doesn't make just one sound. They can combine, and some of them make different sounds if they're placed in different areas. We all know this. That's what makes reading a little bit more difficult. So in phonemic awareness, phonemes are the sounds that make up spoken words. Now these are the smallest segments within spoken language. For example, the word no is made up of 2 phonemes, N-O. We hear them as a single word because we blend the individual phonemes into a unit as we pronounce the word, no. N-O, 2 phonemes, but 1 word. Now, phonemes are represented in written language by graphemes. Now, graphemes may be a single letter, like A or T or N, or they can be clusters of letters that represent one single sound, such as sh or ch or k. So, when you think of phonemes, think of phonemes not as the sounds that letters make, but as the sounds of speech that can be represented by letters. So it's not necessarily one letter, but it's one sound. Now, we're going to do a little activity to see if we can find out how many phonemes are in each of these words. Look at the first word, ran. Now, in your chat box, I want you to go ahead and type in how many phonemes are in the word ran. Good job. You're exactly right. We know ran has ran. Okay, you're going to do the same thing for rain. How many phonemes are in the word rain? This one's a little bit trickier. If we're sounding it out, listen. R-A-N, rain. We hear 3 sounds. Remember, for phonemes, it's just what we hear, not what we see. That's where it gets a little bit tricky. Look at the next word, rain. How many phonemes are in that word? You're exactly right. It's the same way. It doesn't matter how many letters, it's how many sounds we hear. R-ain. Now, let's go to the word 8. How many phonemes are in the word 8? You're exactly right. We hear 8. What about the number 8? Exactly. It's the same thing. It may have more letters. It may be spelled differently. It may have different letters representing the phonemes, but it still has two sounds. A, t. Now here's a really tricky one. Straight. Straight. This one was tricky. If you said 5, you were correct because we hear st, a, t, 5 sounds in straight. So, look at this slide. It says correlation studies have identified phonemic awareness and letter knowledge as the 2 best school entry predictors of how well children will learn to read during their first 2 years of school. So pretty much what they're saying here is if you don't have phonemic awareness and letter knowledge, you're going to struggle later on. But if you have a good foundation in phonemic awareness, then you're going to be a lot stronger reader. Now, when I was working down in the inner city, we would see a lot of students really struggle with phonemic awareness, hearing the sounds, listening to rhymes and understanding things like that. It was a struggle with them, and many of them struggled later on when they were learning to read. So this is very important that we really stress this, especially in the early ages. Now, let's look at what the National Reading Panel found out about phonemic awareness. They found that it's most effective when it's focused on 1 or 2 phonemic awareness skills rather than doing a multi-skilled approach. You ever had that one teacher that just wants to teach everything at once? Well, remember that we can only focus on one thing at a time. I talked about that in the very first class. And so we need to focus on one skill, or maybe we could fit in 2, but try to focus on one thing at a time, and that's the best way that students learn. They also say that children who are taught in small groups, they often learn more. And instruction is based on students' needs assessments. That means we're not just teaching anything, but we know exactly where the students start, what they need to be taught. I'm not teaching little Johnny the beginning sounds when he already knows the beginning sounds. I'm working on him with ending sounds so that I'm not reteaching something that they already know. And also that children are taught to manipulate phonemes with letters. They need to know that, oh, I hear that sound, and that sound is associated with a letter. And we can do that through all kinds of things. When we're writing on the board, when we're reading big books, pointing as we're reading the words, pointing to letters. That can all these things can give the students an idea of that these phonemes are attached to letters. Another thing they said is to make sure a single session doesn't last more than 30 minutes. And 15 to 20 probably be more realistic, especially at this young age. And instruction makes explicit how children are to apply phonemic awareness skills in reading. So you're very explicit in what you're teaching. It's not a kind of a hidden thing, but you're saying this is what we're learning today, this is how we're going to learn it. So it's explicitly taught. So let's look at some of the areas of phonemic awareness. And these are some of the areas you could work on in your unit plan if you're working with a young child who has needs here. The first one is phoneme isolation. So this is just recognizing individual sounds in a word. For instance, the teacher might say, what's the first sound in tiger? T, t. That's what the students would have to say. Or Billy, what's the first sound in Billy? B, b, Billy. So they can recognize individual sounds in a word. That's phoneme isolation. The next thing we look at is phoneme identification. So there they can recognize the same sounds in different words. Excuse me. So the teacher might say, what sound is the same in can, car, and cap? Well, then the students say, well, the first sound, k, k, is the same. K, can, k, car, k, cap. And that is phoneme identification. The next area is phoneme categorization. So here we're recognizing the word in a set of 3 or 4 words that has the odd sound. So here, teacher says, which word does not belong? Pen, pan, or bug? So bug does not belong. It does not begin with P. Now here's a question. Just type in the chat box. Why might the letters P and B, those sounds, be harder to discriminate? Just go ahead and type in the chat box. Why might it be harder for students to discriminate against the P sound and the B sound? You are exactly right. Now, if you watch yourself as you're saying that P sound, and then you're saying the B sound, that can be a very subtle difference, especially for students. Many teachers are using programs like Lips, where the students actually, when they're making the sound, they have little mirrors and they look at what their lips are doing, what their mouths are doing as they're doing the sounds. And that just helps them discriminate between the two. Oh, I do something different for that sound. Okay, then we're going to look at phoneme blending. Now, listening to a sequence of separately spoken phonemes and combining the phonemes to form a word. For instance, the teacher said, what is the word mile? The students, mile is mile. And so we do that a lot. If you're working in like kindergarten, those kind of things, we work on sounding out words. Well, this is the precursor to sounding out words. They need to know how to blend sounds before we ever get to them actually sounding out real words. And so when we say k, at, they need to be able to put that together, k, at, cat, before they ever know that the letters make those words. Okay, then there is phoneme segmentation. Here we're breaking a word into its separate sounds and saying each sound as I can even talk. It's tapped out, counted, or signaled. So they might say, how many sounds are in park? P, R, K. 3 sounds. And so we used to do when we had the students clap. How many sounds are in cat? K, A, T. In one of my classes, we used to pretend like we were playing baseball. I told the students, I'm going to throw you a word. And so they would catch the word, and then they would hold up fingers for every sound they did. So if I threw the word dog, they would catch the word dog, D, A, G. And then they would count how many fingers they held up, and that's how many sounds that they heard. Then we have phoneme deletion. Here we're recognizing the word that remains when a phoneme is removed from another word. So here the example is, what is the bunk without the K? Students say bunk without the K is bun. Now, you can tell as we're moving through this, these get more and more difficult. So you always want to start at that first level where you're just identifying like beginning sounds. And then you're going to move forward as they progress. Okay, the next one is phoneme addition. Here we're making a new word by adding a phoneme to an existing word. So the teacher is, what word do you have if you add P to the end of ram? And the children, of course, say ramp. Notice again how they can get more and more difficult as they go. Now let's go ahead and go on. Phoneme substitution. Here we're substituting one phoneme for another to make a new word. For instance, the teacher says the word is sit. Change the S to a F. Now we have the word fit. And of course, these are getting more difficult. It's really making the students think. They have to think about those sounds. So, the question I want to look at now is, what's the difference when we talk about phonics and phonemic awareness? What are the difference between those two? Go ahead and type what you think in the chat box. What's the difference between phonics and phonemic awareness? Okay, we have a couple answers. Everybody try to type in something. Phonics is sounding out words. Phonemic awareness is the letters in the words. And so what you really want to think about when you're thinking about, okay, somebody said phonics deals with blending. Good. Awareness is being able to look and understand how words come together. Phonics uses that in reading. These are all some good answers. Phonemic awareness is single sounds. Phonics is the rules, blending, and digraphs, etc. Good. The skill to divide oral speech into smaller units of sound, recognizing a relationship between written and spoken words. Very good. Oh, these are all some great answers. What you really want to think about is when you think of phonemic awareness, think sounds. Don't think letters, think sounds. When we go on to phonics, now we're just not sounds, we're teaching the sounds attached to letters. So phonics, sounds with letters. Phonemic awareness, sounds. And yet you're exactly right, Morgan. You have to have phonemic awareness before you go into phonics. I've seen this way too many times as a teacher. I would go into a classroom trying to teach students how to read with phonics, but they couldn't blend words because they never had that phonemic awareness. And so we really have to get a sturdy base in that before we go on to phonics instruction. Now we're going to go quickly to a website where I'm going to give you another few ideas. And this is a great resource. I'll post this up in Pilot also. Here are some ideas. Okay, give me a green check if you can see the screen and it says phoneme isolation on the top. If you can see the screen, go ahead and give me a green check. Okay, I see a few of you can see the screen. If you cannot see the screen, just go ahead and give me a red X. Okay, if you are on an iPad or a mobile device, the web tour feature is not supported. And so you may not get it. And then if you're not seeing it and you're on a computer, it could be lacking in some type of flash. But I will actually tell you what it's going to say, and then we'll move back to the slideshow. So these are just a few examples of some games and different activities you can do with phonemic awareness. And we're going to talk about how you could use these in your lesson plan. So the first one is with phoneme isolation. So the teacher says, this is called guess what or guess who. I'm going to say a name. Guess whose name I'm going to say now. And then they begin, she chooses the name of a student and then just gives the first sound. So maybe if she is looking at or thinking about David, she would just say D, D, D. And they would have to guess what student that she is trying to say. Now, if they can't get it with the first one, then go ahead and give a second sound. D, A. And then keep going through that. But this is a great guess who game. Now, the question is this. How could you change this game to fit your theme of your unit plan? Let's say you were doing a unit plan on cars. How could you change this to where you were still doing phonemic awareness, Guess Who game, but you were doing it around the theme of cars. Go ahead and type in the chat box what you think. Okay, I see a lot of people aren't getting the link, so let me go ahead and post it. I'm going to give you the actual URL. Oh, that's the wrong URL. Hold on 1 minute. There it is. Okay, go ahead and click on that URL. If you cannot see phoneme isolation at the top of the screen, go ahead and click on that and go to page 47 in that PowerPoint. So go ahead and click on the link. Okay, so we have a few. So here's what a couple people said. My car is, so then they have to guess what color the car is. Very good. What color is my car? Oh, it's red. You're right. My color is oh yeah, it's blue. So they're taking their theme, but they're still teaching phoneme isolation. Let's see. So types of cars. Maybe I have a Ford. So we're going to say I have this type of car. It's a f. Or maybe show them a picture of a van. I have a van. But they have to guess what it is. Or maybe you could put some different pictures up on the board and say, which one of these types of cars am I going to say? See if you can guess by me just saying the first letter. Okay, we're going to move on to page 49. If you are just downloading it from the link, go to page 49. So here's a little different example, phoneme isolation and identification. Choose a picture, you put it in a container or a plastic bag. You have enough pictures to be distributed to your students in groups of 2 or 3. And so you discuss each picture with the students before the big game begins so they know what the picture is. Enunciate clearly, emphasize the initial target phoneme. So for instance, if it's a dog, dog. And here they had the word drum. Organize students into teams of 2 or 3. Give each of them a bag with a picture you discussed. And so explain that the team's task is to find other things in the room with the same initial, or maybe you're doing ending or whatever sound you're looking for. So if I have pictures of things that begin with D, like dog, then I have to go around the room and see how many things I could find that begin with the same sound as dog. Dog, door, Daniel. You know, what can I find in that room that begins with the same thing as those pictures? So this is just a couple of ideas. Now on that link there are about 10 or 15 different ideas. So you could keep that and think about some of those kind of things for your lessons. Just makes it exciting for the students, and you can just conform it to go along with the theme of your unit, but you're still doing those phoneme awareness activities. So let's go ahead and go back. And we're going to skip ahead really quick to a video example. Now we're going to see an example of someone that's teaching phonemic awareness. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bring it up in Pilot, but I'm also going to put the link down here in the chat area because it seems like we're having a little difficulty. So I'm going to try to bring it up here. And if you can't see it here, then go ahead and watch it on your own. Okay, go ahead and give me a screen check if you were able to see the video. Just the other day, one of our favorite books called The Hungry Thing. And in The Hungry Thing, there was a monster. And he only ate really silly things. He only ate rhyming words. All right, great. Now
Well,
you can
today,
see here,
he's very
she
hungry,
had a theme.
but
Her
he
theme was a book they had
only wants
read.
to eat
She
words
took that
that
theme and then
rhyme
she
with play.
created this phonemic
Madison,
awareness
can he eat
activity
cookies?
right around this theme. Now we're
No.
going to
Can
watch another
he
one
eat
that's
mice?
kind of like
No.
that,
Why not, Madison?
Because he only
but
wants
from
to eat
another angle.
rhyming words.
He only wants to eat rhyming words. Can you think of...
Once again, I will post the link down here.
Boys and girls, today we're going to sing a song, and it's a little bit of a silly song. And it focuses on the sound T.
All right.
And we
Go
are
ahead and give
going
me
to
another
say
green
our
check if you were able to
names
see
with
the
the
video.
sound T in front. So my real name is Lindsay. If I put a T in front of Lindsay,
I
it would
would
be
estimate
Tinsy. Lauren,
probably
what's your real name?
about a grade
Lauren.
K.
Lauren, how would we say your name if it
You can
started
also
with
do
a
some
T?
phonemic awareness things in grade 1 also.
Ty, how
But
would
you're
your name
primarily
change?
going to focus
They would
on
say the same. Ty.
preschool, grade kindergarten, and first grade for phonemic awareness.
It
You do a
tells
little bit of it in
us
second grade,
that
but
we're going to
most of it will
change
be
our
done in
name
pre-K,
to start with the sound.
K, and first grade.
It's not.
So that's a good question. Now, remember I told you that phonemic awareness needs to be explicitly taught. So here is an example they said. First of all, you're getting started. The teacher explains what they're doing and models. Now, if you look back to that video, the first thing she just did was she said, remember when we did this song, here's what we're going to be doing, and then she modeled it herself. And then they worked together. They did guided practice. So now let's do it together. And so they sang this song together. And then I think if we would have watched on farther, she would have probably said, okay, now what about you, Sally? What would your name be? And actually she did that in the video some. She had some independent application where she asked individual students. And so you want to make sure, especially in those learning segments you're doing for EdTPA, this is what you need. You need to have something getting started, some kind of explanation or modeling. You need then to do that guided practice where you're doing it with them, but in the end, you want them to be able to do that on their own. Are there any questions about that? Explicit instruction. Okay, we're going to go back just a second and look at, again, some more things that we can look at between phonemic awareness and phonics. Now remember I said whenever you hear phonemic awareness, think about the sounds. When you hear about phonics, think about the letters. So here's an example for phonemic awareness. Given the spoken word dog, the students can tell you that the beginning sound is D. Now if I were teaching phonics, given the spoken word dog, the student can tell me that the beginning letter is D. So in phonemic awareness, they're just telling me, oh, that's the sound D. Over here, they're telling me, oh, that's the letter D. Here's another example. Giving the spoken word hat, the students can separate the word into 3 separate sounds. At, hat. That's phonemic awareness. Now for phonics, same thing. Given the spoken word hat, the students can tell you that the letters that spell the sounds in hat are H-A-T, hat. That would be phonics. And so one thing we just want to remember about phonemic awareness, short and fast-paced lessons, you saw those 2 videos, they were just very quickly done, fun little activity, exciting, and I like how that teacher just kind of made some of the parts silly because the students love things that are silly or crazy. It's connected to phonics, it's varied. That means you're not just doing the same activity every day. Now, we do the same activity every day, we know our students are going to get bored. And just focus on 1 to 2 skills every day. All right. So then we're going to talk a little bit about phonics instruction. Now, go ahead and type in the chat box if you were taught to read using phonics, then type in phonics in the chat box. If you were taught to read as a child using some other method, then just type in no. It is kind of hard to think back that far, I know. And so as you're thinking back, many of you think, okay, yeah, probably phonics. And so that's good because research has found that is the way that students learn to read. There was a movement many years ago that said, well, students can just learn to read by interacting with the environment and with books and with text. They'll just pick it up on their own. What we know now is no, students do not just pick it up on their own. They need to be explicitly taught a phonics program. And then there was another program that was just all sight words, and students were not taught any phonics, but just whole words. Well, this was fine. They could memorize whole words, but what happens when I came to a word I didn't know? If I've never seen it before, what skill am I going to use to figure out what that word is? Well, if I don't have phonics, that could make it really tough. So we want to make sure phonics instruction is part of our every lesson. Now, here's an interesting fact. Phonics instruction does not stop with first grade or second grade, but it can be taught up until very high levels. And I'm going to show you how in just a minute. Now, one of the ways phonics is taught, move on here, is by the Orton-Gillingham method or the approach. How many have heard of this approach? Just type yes or no in the text box. So quite a few of you have not. Now, this approach to teaching children how to read is research-based, and it is proven to work. If you ever have some extra professional development dollars, invest in this, because as an intervention specialist, this is a multi-sensory approach to reading, and it is just phenomenal. It really works. We're going to watch a little video about the Orton-Gillingham approach. So I'm going to try open up that web browser again, and then I'll put it also in the text box. Okay, if you were able to see the video, go ahead and give me a green check. Great. Now we have one more very short one that just shows an example of this in practice. Okay, give me another green check if you were able to see that video. Great. Now, thinking about the Orton-Gillingham approach, how many of you have maybe seen parts of this in a classroom before? Go ahead and type yes or no in the chat box. Oh, so quite a few of you maybe have seen parts of this, some have not. Why would this be an excellent program for an intervention specialist? Go ahead and type your answer into the chat box. Why would this program be especially helpful for an intervention specialist? You're exactly right. Everyone that's put in here so far, we're using multiple modalities, and so you're exactly right. They're not just seeing things or hearing things, they're doing it. And so multi-sensory is the approach here. Now, you'll notice in the first video you saw a lot of younger students. In the second video, you even saw a little bit of older student. This was actually used in a high school here in the town I am living at, because it can reach up to high school students. Students who have just always struggled with reading can benefit from this approach. I had a cousin who went to high school and literally felt like he could not read, and went with an intervention specialist. She used the Orton-Gillingham approach, and he came out and he said, first of all, she was the best teacher he ever had, and second of all, he said, I can finally understand what reading is. One of the reasons why is with the Orton-Gillingham approach, it doesn't just teach you the sounds. It's like, for instance, the letter C. Many of us, when we're young, we say, okay, there's seek. But we also know that C can sometimes make a S sound. Now, what the Orton-Gillingham approach does is through exploration, the students find out exactly when that C makes a K sound and exactly when that C makes a S sound. So they're really learning the rules of language. It's not just, okay, this is how it's going to be. They are learning exactly why a certain letter makes a certain sound in a certain place in a word. And so the Orton-Gillingham approach can often help students who have struggled their entire lives and maybe have even given up. This student I was talking about was actually in 9th grade before he became a competent reader, and it was all using this approach. So I would definitely suggest, as intervention specialists, look this up. There's a manual you can get. If you ever have an opportunity to go to one of the trainings, it would be definitely worth your while because of just all the great multisensory things they do, and it's research-based, and we already know it works. So it's definitely good. So we looked at phonics, a set of rules that specifies the relationship between letters in the spelling of words and the sounds of spoken language. We once again said it needs to be explicitly taught, and that's where we looked at the Orton-Gillingham program. And there's a lot of different programs out there, but I think that's one of the best quality that I have actually seen because it teaches just very, very specifically. Now, I want you to think about phonics. Remember I showed you a couple of different activities that you could do with phonemic awareness. Now, we're going to go on a little web quest right now. I want you to go out on the internet, and I want you to find some type of phonics activity, some type of phonics activity that you could do in the classroom in order to teach some type of phonics, whether it be beginning sounds, sounding out words, whatever it may be. You're going to go out on the internet, find some kind of interesting activity. You're going to come back in here. You're going to put it into the chat box, and then we're going to share it with each other. We're going to take about 15 minutes. So be back in here at 6:30, and then we're going to share the different activities that we found. So does everyone understand what they're supposed to do? Give me a green check. Okay, so you're going to go onto the internet. You're going to find some type of phonics activity that teaches specifically phonics. That means the letter that goes with the sound. So that T says T, or that blending sounds together, K-at by C-A-T. So you want to find some type of phonics activity. You're going to come back in here by 6:30. At 6:30, we're going to get together, and we're going to share some of the activities that we found. If you have any more questions, go ahead and type it in the text box. Otherwise, come back at 6:30. Okay. Okay, looks like from looking outside right now, it's a good thing we may have canceled because it's starting to get pretty bad outside. So I think we're good being at home, hopefully. And someone said that if you're in the collaborations class, it is canceled, so you know not to go to that. Okay, now here's how we're going to share. Now, I have given everyone web tour privileges, and I'm going to show you what that is. Look at the yellow circle on the screen, and you'll see what button you click to push web tour. When you do this, it's going to take you to a screen where you can put in your website, and then you can share with the other classmates. So what you're going to do is when it's your turn, just click that button, then put, yes, go ahead, thank you for saying that, push Control-V if you want to copy and paste your URL into the link. That'll paste it. And then you're going to just talk about your activity just a few seconds. It doesn't have to be anything big. Just tell us what the activity is. If you don't have a microphone, then just bring up your website, and then you can just type in a little bit about the activity. Okay, so just go ahead and raise your hand if you'd like to be first, and we'll just go in that order. The quicker you do, the quicker you'll get done. Okay, Kevin, go ahead and start. Don't forget to push the talk button and go ahead and tell us about your activity. Okay, we seem to be having some technical difficulties, and I'm not sure what's going on. Kimberly, go ahead and try yours. Okay, it seems like we're having technical difficulties. Go ahead and type in the chat box if you're having a problem. I'm not hearing any audio. Is anyone else hearing any audio? Oh, this is just crazy. Pilot is just not wanting to cooperate with us. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I want you to just go ahead and keep your website. I will post something on the discussion board in Pilot, and it'll just say Phonics Activities. And then just go in, share your web page, and tell us what that activity is about. Okay, I will post that on the Pilot discussion page. You can go into the Pilot discussion, post your website, and then tell us what the activity is about. So does everyone understand what they need to do for that? Give me a green check. Okay, so when you leave here, you're going to go to the discussion area. I will post a link that will allow you to it'll create a forum. I'm going to say as long as you have it done by next class period, you'll get the class credit for that. Now let's just take a little bit of time for some questions. Okay? Yeah, don't do it right now because it'll take me about 10 minutes to set it up. So at least wait 10 minutes to go post that. But before we end class, I need to know if there's any questions that you might have. Katrina, did you have a question? Okay, that's okay. What you're going to do, that link that you found, you're going to go into Pilot under this discussions page, and I'm going to post a discussion area that says Phonics Activities. All you're going to do is post the link to your activity and tell us what it's about. So are there any questions about that? Wonderful. Now, are there any questions about any assignments? Everyone's doing a great job so far on the reflections. But are there any questions about the chapter reflections? There was a lot more activities I would have loved to do, but we can do them when we get back into class. The question was for next class, all we have to do is the reflections and the discussion of the website. Yes. I'm not sure why it froze up, but yes, it did the same thing here. So, like I said, we're going to go into Pilot on the discussion page, and I'm going to post a discussion board where you can put your link, and then you can just talk about the activity. As long as you have that done by next class period, you'll get the class credit for that. Okay, so last call. Any questions at all before we go? And I should have that discussion post up within 10 minutes. I'm not going to make that a requirement, but, you know, I've been known to give extra credit for people that comment on other people's posts. So if you maybe read someone else's website activity and you comment on it, I might just push some extra credit points over there. And yes, Unit 2 is pushed back as well. Just imagine that every due date is pushed back 1 week, and that's what the final due dates will be. Any other questions? I'm kind of just reading them through the chat here. Now's your chance to ask them. Okay, well, if that is all, I'll put that discussion up. Take those activities, put your link, put the describe the activity, put it up in Pilot, and then hopefully next week we will be meeting in class and we'll get to do some great, wonderful, fun activities. Okay, does everyone understand what they need to do? Give me a green check. Wonderful. Thank you again for being flexible and your meeting here on Pilot. But as of right now, you are finished and you may exit. So have a wonderful evening and stay inside.